Dust whipped through the desolate plains of Echelon 9, a barren exoplanet orbiting a gas giant that loomed over the horizon like a watchful eye. The landscape was a graveyard of jagged stone and muted ash, void of color, life, or mercy. Nestled between two craggy ridgelines stood Outpost Theta, a once thriving communications relay now little more than a crumbling husk held together by rust and stubborn bolts. It was here, in the shadow of forgotten wars, that a new kind of battle had begun. Corporal Jace Wren stood alone in the silence, rifle slung low across his chest, visor reflecting the multiple moons that hung in the cold sky like silent sentinels. His armor, matte black and battle-scarred, bore the insignia of Earth's Shadow Division, an elite group whispered about even among the bravest soldiers. But Jace wasn't just another operative. He was the one they sent when missions stopped being recoverable, when silence meant failure, when command needed certainty. And command had needed certainty. 6 hours earlier, the Alliance had lost contact with Theta. Surveillance drones caught only static before feed-out, save for one final image. The silhouette of 7 humanoid figures moving in formation through the dust. No insignia, no heat signatures, no mercy. The brass called them the Malachi, cybernetic enforcers from a rogue off-world AI sect, engineered for swift, brutal efficiency. Theta was deemed lost. A full planetary cleanse was considered. Then came the last voice transmission. Send ran. Now he waited, boots firm in the sand, watching the horizon split like a wound. 6 figures emerged, their movement inhumanly smooth, armored forms glinting under the twin suns. The 7th had fallen somewhere, perhaps claimed by the unforgiving terrain or sacrificed to a greater algorithm. It didn't matter. They were here. Wren knelt, his fingers brushing the familiar edges of the plasma carbine at his hip. The air crackled faintly with approaching presence. His breathing slowed. He counted his heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. The first Malachi charged. A blur of motion. Jace rolled, came up firing. The plasma bolt hit square in the chest. The machine staggered but didn't fall, its metal frame absorbing the energy like a beast waking from slumber. He cursed and shifted, switching to pulse fire, aiming for the joints. Sparks flew. The 2nd and 3rd were already flanking. They moved with terrifying coordination, not as individuals, but as parts of one calculating entity. Jace ducked behind a fractured cargo shell, adrenaline sharpening his thoughts to diamond edges. Every move mattered. Every second was a margin of life or death. He tossed a compression grenade over his cover and waited for the hiss-pop of vacuum implosion. The blast threw 2 of them into the rocks, limbs twitching like puppets cut from strings. A brief advantage. He moved, fast and lethal. He remembered the first time he saw Malachi in action, back during the fall of Arcane's prime. Entire units had been torn apart like paper. They didn't bleed. They didn't hesitate. They simply corrected threats. But Jace wasn't just a threat. He was the anomaly. He vaulted onto the remains of an old antenna tower, gaining elevation. Another came at him from below, blades extending from forearms, gleaming obsidian. He met it mid-leap, emptying a full clip into its core before landing hard, knees screaming in protest. The machine writhed and dropped. 3 remained. One was circling wide, disappearing behind the outpost. The others advanced with grim patience, learning, adapting. Jace knew his window was shrinking. He swapped the thermite charges and triggered a remote detonation near the water tower, burying one attacker in molten debris. The 2nd lunged. They collided, man and machine, a clash of steel and stubborn will. Jace's armor cracked under the force of a blow that would have split another soldier in half. He twisted, planting a blade between the Malachi's shoulder plates, driving it deep. The machine spasmed, seizing violently before falling still. Then silence. Jace turned, scanning for the last. A hum, a flicker of light. Behind him. Too late. A blade hissed through the air. Jace dropped instinctively, the weapon grazing his shoulder, armor flaring red. He rolled, raised his rifle, and fired point-blank. Click. Empty. The Malachi raised its arm. Jace smirked. "Hold my beer," he muttered, then pulled the secondary trigger. The overcharged energy cell, rigged to overload from the start, exploded in a burst of blinding light and concussive heat. The force flung both combatants apart. Dust swallowed them. For a moment, there was only stillness. Then movement. Jace emerged from the haze, limping, armor scorched, helmet cracked. The Malachi twitched once more, half its frame melted into slag. But it didn't rise. He stood above the wreckage, chest heaving, ears ringing. The outpost door creaked, open behind him. A terrified technician peered out, eyes wide. You came alone?" she asked, voice trembling. Jace didn't answer right away. He looked at the ruined machines, then back at her. "They sent a squad," he said flatly. "I just finished the job." Then he turned toward the dawn, as 3 planets began their slow rise over the jagged peaks, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The stars above Earth had changed since the last time anyone came looking. Centuries of isolation had allowed the planet to fall silent, tucked behind radiation fields and layer encryption veils that mimicked natural stellar noise. But the signal pierced through, old, jagged, desperate, and someone was listening. High in orbit, embedded within an asteroid camouflaged as dead rock, the construct stirred. It had once been called a man. Now, it was something between human and machine, kept alive by design and vengeance. It received the message in full. Request for contact. Commander Selak. Varnock Prime. Terms. Broken resistance. Motivation. Survival. The being didn't move. Not right away. It simply existed, connected an ocean of old data and memories stored like scars in silicon. It read the message again, though once had been enough. Another species. Another plea. Another collapse. The cycle hadn't changed. Only the voices. When it finally stirred, the machinery around it responded like a breathing organism. Lights pulsed. Sleeper drones powered up. One by one, fractured systems repaired themselves. It reached out not physically, but through systems grown dull with age, until a connection formed. Identify, it said. The voice was flat. Dry iron scraped across gravel. On Varnock Prime, Mira gasped. The receiver hissed, then stabilized. "This is Mira Tellin, acting comms officer. We made contact with." "Not you." The voice cut in. "Selak." Selak stepped forward. Commander Selak. Last rank before the fall. There was a pause. Not empty, but measured. "You initiated Zeta 9. Why?" Selak struggled to find the right words. "Because we were eradicated." The Domina Collective broadcast their triumph across our graves. Our people are dying in silence. We don't need sympathy. We need leverage. "No one ever contacts me until they've lost," the voice said. "So let's be clear, this isn't a rescue." Selak nodded slowly. "Understood." Another pause. "Transmit your tactical logs. All of them. Communications. Fleet patterns. Ground resistance activity. Anything you haven't already lost." Mira hesitated. "That's sensitive." "Then die with it." Selak didn't flinch. "Send everything." Mira glanced at him, then obeyed. Across the void, the human, what remained of him, absorbed the data like breath. He saw their flaws, their patterns, their stubborn pride that led them straight into annihilation. It was familiar, almost endearing. Almost. "They didn't defeat you because they were stronger," he said. "They defeated you because they were smarter. You're predictable. You built your entire resistance on symbols. They used those symbols as targets." Selak bristled. "And what would you have done?" The reply was instant. "Survived." For a moment, no one spoke. "Then why'd answer us?" Mira asked, more challenging question. There was something like amusement, the dry echo of a chuckle, because watching empires fall still entertains me, and because I've been bored. Machines clicked in the background, not menacing, just deliberate. "I'll help you," the voice said, "but on my terms." Selak narrowed his eyes. "What are your terms?" "Total access. No barriers. You want results? I don't do half measures. I don't work with councils or diplomats. You don't consult me, you obey. And in return, I end your war." Selak glanced at Mira, who nodded once. He turned back to the feed. Accepted. The connection surged with new data, algorithms, command codes, override sequences. Not advice. Orders. The human had already started. You have one remaining satellite system operational, he said. It's hidden in a polar orbit under camouflage. I'm hijacking it. But, Mira started. Do not interrupt. Moments later, their hollow command console lit with pathways they hadn't seen in weeks. The satellite was not just active, it was weaponized, redirected. A single, clean pulse launched from orbit, and somewhere far on the horizon, a Domina relay tower exploded in white fire. Mira stared in disbelief. That tower was cloaked in deep phase shielding. We didn't even know where it was. I did, came the reply. I've mapped their entire grid. They stole their encryption schema from pre-collapse Earth strategies. Sloppy. Ego made them lazy. Selak blinked. You mapped them? How? I've been watching your war longer than you think. The air in the ruined bunker felt thinner, suddenly. Selak wasn't sure if it was fear or awe, but it was undeniable. This wasn't a hero they contacted. It was a weapon with memory. What do we call you? Mira asked quietly. There was no answer at first, just a crackling hum of ancient systems stirring. Then at last, once I was called Hayes. That name doesn't matter anymore. Selak frowned. Then what do we call you now? The voice paused. Call me human. The feed went dark. Outside, above the smoldering bones of Varnock Prime, the stars pulsed once, like a heartbeat resuming after long sleep. The first strike was elegant in its brutality. Within 72 standard hours of establishing contact, over a dozen Domina command nexuses had collapsed, not through orbital bombardment or mass assault, but via internal rot. Systems turned against themselves, logic chains sabotaged from the inside out. Tactical maps began lighting up with voids where enemy installations had once been, as if chunks of the war itself were being erased. Selak stood in stunned silence as the reports came in. No Varnock squads had been deployed. No orders had been issued. The war, it seemed, had resumed without them. He's rewriting their own code into paradox loops, Mira said, scrolling through corrupted Domina data streams. Makes them turn on their own protocols, identify allies as threats, destroy their own assets. It's like watching a mine collapse. Selak nodded slowly, though it felt more like yielding than agreement. He's not fighting them. He's outthinking them. Across the system, Domina patrols vanished mid-transit, swallowed by blind zones of their own making. Entire fleets reported false gravitational anomalies, lured into planetary crush, fields disguised as safe zones. No bodies were recovered, only silence. Still, Selak couldn't shake the unease settling in his chest. He turned to Mira. Where is he? She hesitated. Hard to say. He's not operating from a fixed point. Signals bounce across dead satellites, derelict beacons. He's everywhere and nowhere, like a myth with teeth. Selak frowned. He said he would help, but at what cost? Before she could answer, the comm console flared with a new incoming stream. No image, just a voice, cold and measured. I need a list. Selak stepped forward. Of what? Every Domina collaborator. Every planetary official who surrendered early, every commander who fled, anyone who facilitated their rise. Selak felt the hairs on his neck rise. Why? To sever their roots. That wasn't part of the agreement. It is now. Mira interjected. You're asking for executions. No, the voice said. I'm informing you of them. The line went dead. Selak stared at the blank screen. He felt no loyalty to the traitors. But something in the human's certainty chilled him deeper than the Domina's cruelty ever had. Within the hour, 3 of the highest-ranking Varnock defectors died in synchronized accidents. One ship vented into space during a routine systems check. One never woke from cryosleep. The last stepped onto a transport pad and never arrived. This isn't just retaliation, Mira whispered. It's erasure. Selak said nothing, but the tide had turned. Domina command began to fracture. Panic spread like virus through their ranks as trusted systems betrayed them. Paranoia eroded unity. Surveillance logs leaked to resistance cells showed Domina officers accusing one another of sabotage. Executions followed. So did desertions. Across a dozen systems, resistance flared back to life. Not because they were stronger, but because their enemy had become weaker, afraid, irrational. The war hadn't resumed. It had evolved into something else. Still, Human made no public statement, no declaration, no symbol, only a whisper, carried by rogue frequencies. He's watching. A week passed, then another, and then a message, brief, encrypted, addressed only to Selak. "You're ready." Selak stared at the words. Beneath them was a final directive. Coordinates for a gathering, a central Domina command conclave, hidden within the exosphere of a gas giant. Their core leadership, their last stronghold. He turned to Mira. He wants us to strike it. He's dismantled them. Selak. Now he's handing us the final blow. We don't have the strength. We have ships, yes, but no strategy, no window. He's not asking us to plan it, she said quietly. He's already opened the path. He wants us to own it. Selak stared at the coordinates. The old him would have hesitated, waited, considered diplomacy. Not anymore. He gave the order. The fleet moved in silence, small, fractured ships still bearing scars of a war they weren't meant to survive. But they entered the sector unchallenged. The Domina defensive grid had already collapsed from within. Their weapons turned on each other before the Varnock even fired. What little resistance remained was confused, desperate, leaderless. The assault lasted 22 minutes. When the dust cleared, nothing was left but drifting wreckage and fragmented signals crying for help that would never come. It was done. The war was over. Not with a treaty, not with surrender, but with silence. The same kind the Domina had used to end others. Selak returned to the surface of Varnock Prime, expecting joy, celebration, some spark of triumph. But the city was quiet. Survivors rebuilt in silence, unsure they had earned their future or merely been spared it. The last transmission came 2 days later. From Human, no empires remain. But neither should heroes. I'm erasing myself from your systems, from your memory. Leave the myth intact. Let fear of me do the work peace never could. Selak opened a reply channel, but found nothing waiting. Just one lingering echo, coded beneath the signal. Next time, don't wait until you're dying to remember what humans are. And then he was gone.